The grand ballroom fell silent as Mark Raymond walked through the doors holding the hands of two small children. The twins' worn clothes stood in stark contrast to the opulent wedding decorations and designer outfits surrounding them. Beverly Horn, resplendent in her wedding gown, froze at the altar. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the shock distorting her features as she stared at her groom. To be arriving with two children no one knew existed. In the back of the room, landscape architect Josephine Thomas nearly dropped her clipboard. After 7 years of failed fertility treatments had ended their marriage, her ex-husband now stood before his new bride with the very thing they couldn't create together: children. Welcome back to Genie Soul Stories, where we explore the unexpected ways love finds us when we least expect it. If this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe so you never miss these moments of unexpected hope. Today's story will show you that sometimes life's greatest heartbreaks lead us to our most precious gifts. But to understand how Mark Raymond, brilliant real estate developer and notorious workaholic, ended up bringing two homeless children to his own wedding, we need to go back and understand the woman he once loved more than anything. Josephine Thomas grew up knowing one thing for certain: people leave. Her mother disappeared when she was 12, leaving nothing but a small garden of wildflowers and endless questions. Her father, drowning in his own grief, barely noticed his daughter's broken heart. The only place Josephine found solace was in that small garden, where she discovered that with enough care and patience, things could grow even after devastation. By 30, Josephine had transformed her healing hobby into a thriving landscape architecture firm called Renewal Gardens. Her specialty became breathing life back into forgotten historical gardens, seeing potential where others saw only ruin. Clients marveled at her ability to uncover beauty beneath years of neglect. What they didn't know was that every garden she restored was a prayer, a hope that she too could be made whole again. When she met Mark Raymond at a charity auction, something unexpected blossomed. Behind his confident exterior and impressive business acumen, she glimpsed a soul as hungry for connection as her own. Their courtship was a whirlwind of deep conversations under starlit skies and picnics in her latest garden restorations. Within a year, they were married in the first garden she'd ever designed professionally. "I want to build something beautiful with you," Mark had whispered during their vows. "Not just buildings or gardens, but a family." Family. The word held such promise. For Josephine, it represented everything she'd lost, and everything she desperately wanted to create. They began trying for a baby immediately, certain that the universe couldn't deny two people who loved each other so completely. But sometimes the universe has other plans. After 2 years of negative pregnancy tests, they sought medical help. The diagnosis was devastating. Both had fertility issues that made conceiving naturally nearly impossible. What followed was 5 years of treatments, hormones, procedures, disappointments, and mounting medical bills that Mark paid without complaint. Each failure carved away another piece of Josephine's heart until she began to believe that perhaps she was destined to nurture plants instead of children. But while gardens thrived under her touch, her marriage withered. The more procedures failed, the more Mark buried himself in work, expanding his real estate empire with the same ferocious determination he'd once applied to starting their family. His company, Raymond Revitalization, grew exponentially as their connection diminished to polite conversations and separate bedrooms. On their 7th anniversary, Josephine waited alone at the restaurant where they'd had their first date. After 2 hours, when it became clear Mark wouldn't arrive, she finally acknowledged what they'd both been avoiding. Their marriage had become another failed project. The divorce was quick and civilized on paper. Mark gave her everything she asked for without argument. What no one saw was Josephine crying herself to sleep every night for months, mourning not just her marriage but the children they would never have together. But to understand how deeply their separation wounded them both, we need to know Mark's story too. Unlike Josephine, Mark Raymond knew exactly why his mother left: poverty. Growing up with a father who worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads, Mark learned early that money meant security. His childhood was defined by second-hand clothes, past due notices, and his father's constant refrain: "Study hard." be successful. Never end up like me. Mark took those words to heart. He worked through high school, earned scholarships to college, and graduated with honors. By 25, he'd started his first real estate venture, converting an abandoned warehouse into affordable apartments. By 30, his company had restored dozens of buildings in forgotten neighborhoods, providing homes for families while building his fortune. His wealth grew, but something was missing. When he met Josephine, with her quiet strength and ability to create beauty from neglect, he recognized a kindred spirit. For the first time, he envisioned a future beyond the next building project. He imagined children with Josephine's gentle eyes and his determination, a family that would heal the empty spaces in both their hearts. The infertility diagnosis hit Mark like a physical blow. In his mind, his body had betrayed them both. Though he never said it aloud, he believed Josephine deserved someone who could give her the family she longed for. Rather than face his shame, he retreated to the one place he felt competent, his work. After their divorce, Mark dated casually, cultivating a playboy image that kept women at a safe distance. When he met Beverly Horn, polished, ambitious event planner to Boston's elite, he proposed within 6 months. Her disinterest in having children felt like a relief. No more disappointment, no more failure. But at night, in moments of rare honesty, Mark would still take out the journal where he wrote letters to the children he'd never have. Letters about his hopes, his fears, the lessons he wished he could teach them. Letters addressed to dreams that died a little more with each passing year. Then everything changed on a rainy Tuesday, 3 months before his wedding to Beverly. Mark was inspecting a dilapidated community center his company had purchased when he met Dennis Turner, the director of Second Chance Home, a shelter temporarily housed in the building. Dennis was frantically trying to find new accommodations for his residents before demolition began. "We've got 17 people here," Dennis explained, exhaustion etched on his face. "Most critical are the Mitchell twins. They've bounced between 4 placements in 2 years since losing their parents. Another move could destroy what little stability they have left." Something about the man's dedication moved Mark. "Show me around," he said. That's when he met Lily and Lucas Mitchell, 8-year-old twins with solemn eyes that had seen too much sorrow for their young lives. Lucas, analytical and watchful, assessed Mark with the wariness of a child who'd learned not to trust easily. Lily, artistic and protective, stood slightly in front of her brother, as if to shield him from yet another disappointment. "They're special kids," Dennis said quietly. "Their mother was an artist. Their father taught mathematics. They lost everything in that accident. Parents, home, security." Mark watched as Lily carefully tended a scraggly plant growing in a cracked mug by the window, the twins' only possession from their former life. In that moment, something cracked open inside him. "What if we delay demolition?" Mark heard himself saying. "Give me some time." Over the next weeks, Mark visited the shelter regularly, telling Beverly he needed to personally oversee the project. He brought books for Lucas, art supplies for Lily. He found himself sharing stories about his own childhood, surprised by how easily the twins broke through defenses that had kept everyone else at arm's length for years. When he discovered that the distant relative who was supposed to take custody of the twins had backed out, leaving them truly alone in the world, Mark made a decision that would change everything. Which brings us back to the wedding day that started our story. The whispers in the ballroom grew as Mark guided the twins down the aisle toward his stunned bride. "What is the meaning of this?" Beverly hissed, her smile frozen in place as cameras clicked around them. "Beverly, I'd like you to meet Lily and Lucas," Mark said calmly. "They'll be coming home with us after the honeymoon." Beverly's practiced poise cracked. "You brought street children to our wedding. Are you insane?" She lowered her voice to a venomous whisper. "Get them out of here before they ruin everything." In that moment, Mark saw Beverly clearly for the first time. Her beauty calculated, her warmth performed. He thought of Josephine, who could find beauty in the most neglected places, who had wanted nothing more than to nurture a child. "They're not going anywhere," Mark said firmly. And neither am I. Beverly's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious, Mark replied. I'm sorry, Beverly. You deserve someone who wants the same things you do. As gasps spread through the crowd, Mark felt Lucas's small hand tighten in his. He looked down to see the boy watching him with cautious hope. On his other side, Lily pressed closer, her thin shoulders straightening as if sharing his burden. From the back of the room, Josephine watched the scene unfold with her heart in her throat. For years, she'd pictured Mark moving on, creating the family they couldn't have together. Now, seeing him defend these children who weren't even his, she glimpsed the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had been buried beneath ambition and disappointment. As guests began speaking in scandalized whispers, Josephine slipped out a side door into the gardens she'd designed for this very wedding. The irony wasn't lost on her, creating the perfect setting for her ex-husband to marry another woman. She needed air, space to process the confusing emotions churning inside her. She didn't expect to find Mark there 10 minutes later, the twins still by his side. I thought you might be here, he said softly. 5 years of carefully constructed indifference crumbled as their eyes met. Before Josephine could respond, Lily broke away from Mark and walked directly to a white rosebush. These are like the ones in the picture, the girl said, touching a petal with gentle fingers. What picture? Josephine asked, kneeling beside her. Lily reached beneath her worn sweater and pulled out a tarnished locket. Inside was a pressed white rose petal and a faded photograph of 2 young girls in a garden. Josephine's hands trembled as she recognized herself at 12 years old, arm in arm with her childhood best friend Sarah. The friend who had moved away after Josephine's mother left. The friend she'd lost touch with despite countless letters. Where did you get this? She whispered. It was our mom's, Lucas answered, joining them. She said it was from her best friend, the girl who taught her about gardens. Josephine's world tilted on its axis. Sarah Mitchell was your mother. Mark watched in amazement as the pieces fell into place. The universe, it seemed, had a strange sense of symmetry. In the weeks that followed, Josephine found herself drawn back into Mark's life through the twins. She discovered that Sarah had named her as the children's guardian in her will. Information that had been lost in bureaucratic shuffling after the accident. By some cosmic coincidence, Mark had found the very children who were connected to Josephine's past. She began inviting the twins to help in her gardens. Watching Lily's natural talent with plants and Lucas's methodical approach to design, Josephine felt a connection she'd never expected. These weren't just Sarah's children. They were remarkable people in their own right, with hearts that had somehow remained open despite profound loss. Mark observed these interactions with growing wonder. The Josephine he saw with the twins was both familiar and new. The same nurturing spirit, but with a strength he'd never fully appreciated during their marriage. Their newfound peace was threatened when a previously unknown uncle appeared, demanding custody of the twins, and control of the modest insurance money left for their care. His interest seemed more financial than familial, but he had a biological claim that neither Mark nor Josephine could counter. Faced with losing the children to someone who viewed them as a financial opportunity, Mark and Josephine found themselves fighting side by side. Mark provided legal resources while Josephine created stability through consistent care and attention to the twins' emotional needs. It was during this battle that the walls between them finally crumbled completely. One evening, after a particularly difficult day in court, Josephine stayed late in the memorial garden she'd created years ago. A private space dedicated to the children she never had. Rain began falling, but she continued working, as if the physical labor could somehow wash away years of pain. That's where Mark found her, soaked to the skin, tears mingling with raindrops. You'll catch pneumonia, he said, holding out an umbrella. Better than catching feelings again, she replied with a bitter laugh that caught them both off guard. The unexpected honesty broke something loose. I failed you, Mark said, his voice raw. I couldn't give you the family you deserved, so I buried myself in work instead of facing our pain together. And I shut down instead of telling you how much I needed you to just hold me through it, Josephine admitted. We both failed our marriage. In the safety of the falling rain, they spoke truths they'd never dared voice before. How Josephine had interpreted Mark's workaholism as proof he didn't really want children with her. How Mark had believed her emotional withdrawal meant she blamed him for his infertility. How grief had created a chasm between them that neither knew how to bridge. I never stopped loving you, Mark confessed. Even when I convinced myself I had. I tried to hate you, Josephine whispered. It would have been easier than missing you every day. The rain fell harder around them, washing away years of misunderstanding. For the first time since their marriage ended, they truly saw each other. Not as they once were, but as they had become. Two people shaped by loss but not defined by it. Two people who might, given the chance, love better this time. The twins need stability, Josephine said finally. They need us to be clear about what we are to each other. What are we? Mark asked. Instead of answering, Josephine took his hand and led him to where she'd been digging. In the freshly turned earth were two small seedlings. Twin oak trees barely beginning their journey toward the sky. Lily helped me plant these yesterday, she explained. She said one was for her birth parents and one was for their new family. Whoever that might be. Mark understood the metaphor immediately. Some things must end for others to begin. Some losses create space for unexpected gifts. The custody case united them in purpose, forcing them to function as a team again. The judge, impressed by their commitment and the twins' obvious attachment to them both, granted joint guardianship, with the stipulation that they provide a stable home environment. Does that mean you have to get married again? Lucas asked with characteristic directness when they explained the ruling. Mark and Josephine exchanged startled glances. It means we all need to figure out what family looks like for us, Josephine answered carefully. But you love each other, Lily stated with childlike certainty. We can see it. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. Their reconciliation wasn't immediate or simple. They began with co-parenting, creating routines and boundaries that put the twins' well-being first. Slowly, cautiously, they rebuilt trust through small moments of vulnerability and consistency. Mark finally showed Josephine his journal, the letters to unborn children that revealed how deeply he'd mourned their shared dream. Josephine brought Mark to the women's shelter where she volunteered, showing him the parts of herself she'd hidden during their marriage. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Mark sold his lavish bachelor apartment and they purchased a home together. A fresh start with space for gardens and 4 people learning to be a family. In the back garden, the twin oak saplings took root and began to grow, just as the bonds between the 4 of them strengthened with time and care. On the 1-year anniversary of the day Mark arrived at his almost wedding with the twins, they held a different kind of ceremony in the garden. Not a legal wedding, but a commitment ceremony where all 4 of them exchanged promises. Mark and Josephine recommitted to each other with wiser hearts. The twins received adoption papers, making official what love had already decided. Family isn't always what we expect it to be, Josephine said during the ceremony, her eyes moving from Mark to the children who had healed them all. Sometimes it's what we find when we're busy mourning what we've lost. Mark transformed the struggling shelter where he'd met the twins into a thriving community center, with gardens designed by Josephine where children learned to grow food and heal from trauma. The Mitchell twins, once homeless and alone, bloomed in the steady sunlight of unconditional love. As for Beverly Horn, she sent a card months later. A simple note acknowledging that Mark's rejection had forced her to examine what she truly wanted rather than what looked good on paper. She'd taken time to travel alone, discovering that the security she sought couldn't be found in another person's wealth. Life rarely gives us exactly what we planned for. Sometimes it takes away the dream we thought we wanted and replaces it with one we never dared imagine. For Mark and Josephine, the path to parenthood didn't come through biology but through tragedy transformed into blessing. Their ability to create life manifested not in shared DNA, but in the restoration of 4 broken hearts forming a new whole. The twins never forgot their birth parents. Their memories were honored and kept alive through stories and traditions. But they found healing in the knowledge that love doesn't diminish when shared. It only multiplies. Years later, when the memorial garden had grown lush and vibrant, Lucas found the journal where Mark had written letters to his unconceived children. With tears in his eyes, he showed his sister the entry dated just days before Mark met them. A letter that ended with words that seemed prophetic. Wherever you are, whoever you are, know that you are already loved. I may never meet you, but my heart will recognize you. And it had. If this story of love finding a way touched your heart, let me know in the comments what moved you most. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that second chances are possible. And subscribe for more stories that remind us all that sometimes our greatest heartbreaks lead us to our most precious gifts. Remember, here at Genie Soul Stories, we believe that family can be found in the most unexpected places. And love, when it's real, always finds a way home.